Everybody, it is 6 o'clock and my computer says that we are live. I hope that's true. All right, I see several people out there. I just want to say hello to Mary and Jan. Let me see who else. Oh, Kathleen and Eve. Hi, everybody. So happy you guys are here. We are continuing our series, Krabby Patty. So right behind me is the main panel that you should have made. These are wandering geese blocks that are 10 inches by 10 inches. Surrounding our little wavy applique that we did. And so that's Krabby Patty in the middle. And for those of you who are just joining us for the first time, this is episode number 6. Let me share my desktop so you can see where to find the resources. You go to www.jellyrollclub.com. I'm going to be sharing with you Wally the Whale today. So we just have a few other blocks left, and then we're going to finish this up. But today is Wally the Little Whale. I have 2 things that you need to look at. Wally the Whale has a handout link. It looks like this. That's the one I'm using today. And also there's information about a clamshell block if you're using templates. If you want to use templates for the clamshell block, you're going to have to click on the template link, and it is separate. So it looks like this. And that is if you want your block, your clamshells, to fill all the way in. Now, if you want that, you're going to probably have to print that out and just check the measurements, and I will do that in just a second for you. Okay, so last time we were together, let me just switch around. Last time we were together, we were working on some fish, and let me just show you what we've done so far. And thank you for joining me. All right. So here we are. So I have the clamshell template. It looks like this. I've made it so that it fits a jelly roll strip. So if you notice, you lay a jelly roll strip on there, it fits on there very nicely. So this will be made with jelly rolls. If you don't have a printer, but you have access to a Dresden template, and I had a Dresden template that a lot of people downloaded on my channel for the Dresden quilt. But if you have a Dresden plate that is an 18 degree or a 20 blade Dresden plate of some type, you can use that in its place. If you notice, it's a tiny bit skinny, but it'll still do the job for this actual block. So that will work on it. So last time we were together, we were working on the fish, and let me just show you who I have. So this is Finley. Finley the fish. He needs his little fins on the top and the bottom. I finished his other partner in crime. So if you notice, it looks like this. So I have my little fish here. I have the bottom panel that I've been working on, and I have several of the blocks already finished. And they are the little turtle. I've got a little fish. I have a little turtle. And I have this little jellyfish that could be an octopus. It doesn't really matter. You can call them whatever you want. But this is where I'm going to put Wally the Whale, in this section here. And so that's what we're going to work on tonight. Finley the fish, these are going to go on a separate part of my quilt, and so that's why I have them out separate. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So for today's block, I'm going to be making Wally the Whale. And so let me just get Wally the Whale out. And so what I did is I'm going to make 2 Wally the Whales for each one of these animals. I'm making 2 of each to fit on the quilt. And so Wally the Whale looks like this. You can use an orangey red. You need at least a 6.5 inch by 8.5 inch rectangle for Wally's body. And I've traced him around with a Sharpie, just like this, just a regular Sharpie. And I do that with this big fat one because I can reverse him that way, and I can cut him out 2 different ways. So what I've done is I've traced him diffusible applique, and so I have 2 Wallies, one going to the left, one going to the right. I have the little bit of water that comes out of his blowhole, and I think I'm going to omit the other little dots. I haven't decided yet, but I might leave the dots off. But he needs a big smiley face and an eyeball. So let's go ahead and get Wally completed. So the first thing that I'm just going to do is I'm going to cut these out. I save all the trimmings of my fusible web. This is Pellon 805. But I save all the trimmings and I do the eyes and the other little parts with those pieces. You'll see that in just a minute. But I'm just going to trim this out. I leave a little border, not much. Get a bigger pair of scissors. Those are awful small. Not much past the line. You get these little blowholes. Let me move that out of the way. So if you notice, he has, all of these little creatures have eyes. What I do with the leftover bits of fusible is I just kind of grab them all and stick them on the back of, like, this is a black scrap, and so this is how I'm going to make all of those eyeballs. And so I'm just going to just keep adding it to my little black piece, and that'll be the last thing that I do is add all the eyes, but I just add it to a little black scrap, and I have all the other extra eye pieces in here. All right, so I have Wally the whale. I'm going to use like a salmon colored, an orangey pink would be great. This one kind of looks kind of speckly, and this is why I'm not going to add spots to my whale. This is just a half yard that I had in my sewing room, and I thought he looks really cute. He pops against that background. So I'm going to go ahead and warm up my iron. This has been washed. I do like to use pre-washed fabric anytime that I'm appliquing, just because it allows my applique to stay nicer for a longer period of time. It doesn't warp, it doesn't wrinkle or crinkle, and it just stays pretty. All right, so this here, I'm going to cut a little piece and save that. That makes good eyeballs or leaves or stems or other things. And there's a little bit right here. So anytime that I can, I just save those little bits of fusible interfacing, fusible web, anything like that, just because stuff is expensive these days. And then I use the least amount of fabric as well. All right, so the iron is hot, and I'm going to put this as close to the edge as possible. See if you can see that. Just line that up. Just like this. I've trimmed it with my paper scissors. And this takes about 15 seconds with a hot, dry iron. I need a second Wally. So I'm going to run him the other direction in the same area where I just added this one. Like this. I'm trying to waste the least amount of fabric. And so 15 seconds. And I have two Wally the whales. One going one direction, one swimming the other direction. And I can just kind of loosely trim around them like this. And I don't know about you guys, but cutting around an applique piece kind of gives me a little bit of an OCD vibe, because I end up with all this raggedy stuff, these raggedy edges. So then when I'm trimming my scraps, I'm like, eek. I don't know about you guys, but it gets on my last nerve to have to cut into my fabric like this. All right. So now that I have my whales, I'm going to use my precision scissors. And I'm going to use these guys to cut around it. I have smaller scissors just for this job. And they do a good job. These are serrated little grippy scissors. And I'm trying to make smooth, clean trimmings when I do that. I'm just cutting. I'm going to cut that black line off if I can, because that ensures that I have glue all the way up to that edge. Now, I have shown people how to do a method if you don't have fusible web where you're located. If you're having a hard time getting a hold of it in the mail, you can always starch this very heavily and then use a glue stick to get it down onto your background. So if you don't have fusible web like I'm using, you can always use the good old-fashioned glue stick method. And I showed that in a previous episode. So there she is, Wally the whale. I like how she looks. Growing up, one of my neighbor's moms was named Wally, and she was a nice lady. So this is Wally the whale in her honor. All right. So here she comes. Before I remove the background, I'm going to go ahead and put the eye on the other side because it's easier to do that while she's like this. All right. So I have two little Wallies, and I'm going to find a little Wally eye. So I'm going to dig into my pile of eyeballs. They say eye. And all of the eyes on these are pretty much the same size. I went ahead and traced a bunch on like a piece of a 5x5, like a charm square, and I added all of the Wally eyes on here. Once I have that, use something sharp like a needle that's already been fused. And I'm going to put Wally eyes on there. So if you want to notice, I put that registration mark so I can kind of tell where that eye is going to be. It looks like it's about there. So I'm going to put that there, and I'm going to do one more Wally eye. And then I have to decide where to put these little blowholes. Now these little blowholes can all be like a contrasting color. If you want to use, if you're doing hot pink like I am, you can do yellow, you can do a white, something that will really show the water that blows across the top of those blowholes when the little whale does their thing. I think I might do yellow. What color do you guys think I should do the little blow water that comes out of the blowhole? Should I do yellow? Should I do white? I haven't quite decided. Thinking maybe a yellow. See how bright that is? Maybe that's too bright. That's the thing about pulling stuff from your sewing room. Sometimes the fabrics you have are too bright. This one is a pale yellow. I don't know if you can see that, and this is a bright lemony yellow. I think I'm going to use this pale yellow for the blowholes. What do you guys think? Pale yellow? I think this pale yellow will do. I think Wally is cute in pink. I was going to make her red, but I think she looks cute. Oh, there's pink in this, so I think this will do. I don't know if you can see that. Here, let me try to adjust my exposure just so you guys can see. And this is like a lemony pale yellow. It doesn't look that way on the screen, but that is what it is. And it has like little bits of pink, so I think this one's going to do just fine. And so I'm going to try to keep these close to the edge. And then the blowhole itself, I think I'm going to make the blowhole black. The image shows it like a pink, but I think I'm going to make it black. Just because I think it'll be cuter. Now, if you have a jelly roll strip, the little blowholes fit in a jelly roll strip. You don't have to use a big fat quarter like I grabbed out of my sewing room. And so if you notice, you just need a piece that's about 2 inches wide. All right. This is going to go really fast. And I drew the little blowholes. I use a curvy pair of scissors sometimes for these little tiny pieces, just because it's more accurate, I think, to cut with a little curvy pair of scissors. Just slide right in there. Flip them around. And I like these little tiny curvy scissors for little precise curvy little parts. And there is no need to reverse the little blowhole water because these will be the same way whether you do it reverse or not reverse. So it doesn't matter if these are reversed. But they just go like this. They come out of the little blowhole in this manner, just like that. I've got another one. And I think Wally the Whale is going to look quite adorable. All right, I'm going to set this aside because I'm going to do the second one later. But I'm going to go ahead and pull out some black. And I'm going to do the blowhole. In the blowhole, I'm just going to lay these out. And it's just a little oval, so you don't have to be super precise. You're just going to cut a little oval like this that fits all of the pieces. So I'm just going to cut an oval. I don't know if you can see that. I'm going to take some of this. And we're just going to cut a little odd-shaped oval. It doesn't even have to be super perfect because it's a little blowhole shadow. It's going to go on the top of her head. All right. So now that I have all of this stuff here and I have my whale with her little eye, I'm going to put her on the bottom of my bottom section. So I'm going to take this piece that I've been working with, just like this. And I know that this fits exactly across the bottom, so I'm going to put Wally the Whale, just like this. And I'm going to have her swimming. I can have her swimming up, I can have her swimming down, but I think I'm going to have her swimming kind of straight. And so I'm going to take Wally. I'm going to go ahead and draw an eye, but I'm going to applique a little black circle there later. But for now, I'm just going to put a black eye where I want it with a Sharpie. Just like that. She's smiling, so Wally the Whale has a little smiley face. And so I'm going to go ahead and mark it, but that one will get a little applique piece, or I could do embroidery. So I'm going to go ahead and mark where Wally's smile is. And then this smile is going to get a little bit bigger later. So let me just use a very fine line, and this wants to bleed a little bit. And that's what happens when you use a marker. Should have used a friction pen. And then I'm going to set that for a second. There we go. So be careful whenever you're using a marker that you're not bleeding everywhere. Her mouth is going to be a little bit bigger, so I'm okay with that. But just be careful when you're doing this kind of stuff. All right. Time to adhere Wally on there. I'm going to pull all of this fusible web right off. And she's ready to anchor with her little blowhole right in the center. So I'm just kind of putting her in the middle. She's going to get a little blowhole. Does that happen to you guys? You're in your sewing room, you think you're about to fuse everything, and then you're missing something. There it is. There's my blowhole. See if I can get that off. There we go. Blowhole's going at the top like this. And then these little guys will come off. So I'm going to try to get it up close to the top like this. And then I'm going to have the blow water come out. Maybe out of the blowhole like this. Maybe a little bit higher. I think I'm going to try to move the blowhole. Make that a little bit smaller. It's a little bit too big for my taste. And if you ever see something in an applique and you don't like it, you can always just make it your own, make it different. And that blowhole's a little too fat, so I'm going to make it a little tiny bit slimmer. All right. These tiny little curved scissors are embroidery scissors, and they're used for trimming embroidery, like close to the surface without trimming your fabric. And I love these because they're curvy and they're specifically for applique and embroidery. Especially machine embroidery, we have to go in and do a lot of trimming, but they're super sharp and they're super tiny. They're from Ginger. And so these are my favorite little scissors. Yeah, I think I'm going to definitely do white for the other whale, and then these will be yellow, so the little blowholes will be different for each one. All right. I'm going to put a little bit of distance between the blowhole and the little blow water, because when I come in and I sew, I don't want to run over my things just to make it look cuter. And so I'm definitely going to probably separate the blow water from the blowhole just a little bit like this. And so this will allow me, that's why this is going down, this will allow me to do a cuter amount of applique, and maybe that blowhole goes up a little bit higher. So just play with your applique until you get it the way you like it. And I think I like it like this rather than on top of itself. Just like that. And so then my blowhole gets angled like this, because that's how it makes sense in this little whale. And now that I have the entire thing, now I can press her. I'm going to press it down. And I start on one side and I just move across. Careful not to lift my iron. Now I'm going to check it. This is just a little bit of a little thread there. And then this is a little fuzzy piece right there. I'm just going to peel that off. A little tiny bit of applique that got stuck. If you ever have a little bit of applique like that black that was stuck on there, I just, while it's still warm, use the side of your scissor like this, and it pulled it right off. And you can do that anytime you want. And that looks cute. I like how Wally is looking. I don't think I'm going to put any extra spots on Wally. I think she looks fine just the way she is. And now I'm just going to sew around her just like I did the other ones. You notice I just did straight line stitching all the way around. I did yellow around the fins, and then I did white or ivory around the other ones. And so this looks fine just the way it is. Just white all the way around. All right, so now that I have this panel, and let me just show you my big guy. So now that I have this panel, I'm going to have to adjust the panel and sew it to the bottom. So let me pin this up here so you guys can see. So this panel is going across the bottom. I could always put it across the top, but I'm just going to adjust it and make sure that it fits the width of my quilt. And so I'm going to go like this, because it looks like I'm going to have, and I've marked it right here with a little pin, little pen mark. I've marked where I want it. And so now what I have to do to this is I'm just going to have to trim it and sew it across the bottom. And I have to make a second panel with a set of sea creatures. I can fit up to 4, and I'm going to do it across the top. So I'm going to sew my top and bottom panels. The next thing I have to do is I have to sew vertical panels with the other animals. And so where I have these fish, and I like the animals that look like this, I'm going to be sewing the animals that go down the sides. I'm going to use 6 little creatures, and then I might even do some seaweed on the sides. I have to decide yet. We'll do that on the finishing episode. I'll have to decide if I want to do some seaweed. So if you think that we need to add seaweed just to fill up the bottom of this little oceany part, I think maybe we could add some seaweed, and that would be cute. All right, so several of you guys asked me to go ahead and do the clamshell corners, which we're going to do today, and it won't take us very long. So let me show you what we've got. So one of the things I said, let me pull this out, is that we were going to do those clamshells. So the clamshell has a template, and this is for those of you who want to do, you can see that. Let me change the exposure here. There we go. You can see that better. So the clamshell is for applique. So if you want to use this for applique, it's for needle turn applique, because this is like a grandmother's fan, but it's 4 across. And 4 of these will fit on a 10.5 by 10.5 inch block. If you don't want to get that fussy, and I like to take shortcuts all the time, then one of the things that you can do is just use a traditional Dresden plate. And so I've got these here. So I've decided I'm just going to do a traditional Dresden plate. It fits, an 18-degree blade fits on here, and it is 6 inches long. It's going to make it a little bit shorter than I have here, but I'm just going to add a center. And we'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. So what I did is I got these fabrics, and I've decided that I'm going to do 5 because in order to do a 1/4 Dresden plate, I need 5 blades. So I'm going to do this one, maybe this one here in the middle. I'm going to do this one again, and then I'll do a light one at the end. And so I'm going to do a Dresden blade, do 5 Dresden plates for this using this color combination. And I think that's going to look cute. Now this will fill in the space about 3/4 of the way, not all of the way. And so for those of you who are unfamiliar with Dresdens, most traditional Dresdens take 20 blades to make a full circle that's 360 degrees. So today, I'm just going to use 5. I'll cut these. Just stack them up nice and neat, one on top of the other. I don't normally like to cut 5 things at a time, but I think I will this time. It'll be fine. And these are, let me see, 6 inches long, maybe a little bit longer than that. That's okay. And I'm going to lay them on top of each other. And then I have this template that I made. If you want this template, it's under my Dresden project. And I put them there. So if you don't have a Dresden blade, you can find them there. And a 6 1/4 inch Dresden blade will fit. And so I'm just going to cut on this side of my template. I'm going to rotate this little thing around just like this, and I'll use my small ruler and I'll cut the other side. And just like that, I almost made it all the way through. And just like that, I cut all of my Dresden blades. Now, Dresden blades, you have to start with pairs. So I'll start with this one in the middle, and I'll sew it to that one. Then I'm going to have this one on the side, so I'll sew it to that one. And I'm just going to sew a 1/4 inch on either side of these pieces. So now that I have all my pieces, I'm going to sew them like this first. And don't worry about those little teeth up there, they'll be fine. And I'll go ahead and sew this next. So I'll take them over to the sewing machine, 1/4 inch on either side of those, and they're going to be super cute, I think. I hope they are anyway. Let me see, do I have thread in my machine? I sure hope so. Otherwise, I'm going to have to add a bobbin in there. And it looks like I need a bobbin. I'll just throw a bobbin in there. And I don't get really picky about what color bobbin thread I have. I reuse whatever I've got. Yep, this one's empty. And I use up my bobbins until they're gone. I use a lot of neutrals, grays, creams, but I use that until it's gone. I don't get too picky about my bobbin thread. All right. Pull that up. And we'll go ahead and get started. Now, one of the things that I do like to do is I do like to use a little bit of a leader ender just because it keeps it from chewing up your thread. And it just makes it look cleaner when you get started. So let's go ahead and pull this thread out of the way. And I'll go ahead and start on these. When you sew a Dresden, start at the bottom rather than the top, because as you sew these, there is a little bit of a bias, and you tend to kind of stretch and pull them away as you sew. So just go from the bottom and move your way up, and you'll end up with a more accurate Dresden if you do it that way. I'm just coming from the bottom, trying to keep that lined up. And then I have to go ahead and pull these off. because we have to add a middle piece. Now normally I would press these before adding the middle piece, but this one isn't, I'm not too picky. This is going to go on the outside. I'm just going to kind of finger press it very so slightly, don't stretch it. And I'm going to add this one right there because my clamshell looks like it's getting darker in the middle and lighter on the edges. And so I'm just going to line those up. They don't have to be perfect because I'm going to add a circle to that later. But I just have to make sure those sides are lined up. All right. Let me get this out of the way. Finger pressing is a super helpful thing to do when you quilting and you're sewing. You just kind of get in there and press those seams open with your fingers. Just take it ever so slightly. With a Dresden, I want all of my blades to go the same direction, so I'm just going to take with my fingernail ever so slightly, crease that open, and now I'm going to do the next piece, which goes on here. And so I will have now these two and these three, and I will put them together. The reason for sewing them in pairs is because it tends to distort your blades a whole lot less if you sew them in pairs, then quarters, etc. So anytime you're doing a Dresden plate, sew them in pairs first, then in quads, and so on and so forth. It does make for a more accurate Dresden blade. Okay, now one of the things that clamshell has is little curves. I did not put little curves on mine because I'm going to put little curves at the end, and I'm going to show you how. All right, these are going to be super cute. I think I'm liking these. If you like this little project, just let me know that you do. Look at that. So my little clamshell is going to fit right here. And if you notice, there should be some on either side that doesn't quite reach the edges because this is going to be a seam allowance. And so let me go ahead and just take my clamshell, and now I'm going to press it. I want to make sure that this is going flat and that I don't have any weird creases. And so these are all going to one side. I'm going to take the last one and I'm going to press it over. And by doing so, I have spread my clamshell all the way out. All right, now I could leave this fan just like this if I wanted to, not a problem. This is going to come as close to that edge as you can get it, like this. And it should fit inside that seam allowance. This one at the bottom is going to get covered up like this. It's going to get covered up by like a half moon. I could leave it alone and not cover it up with a half moon. I could just trim it and stitch it down, but I think I'm going to put a little quarter circle down here at the bottom. I think this project is looking cute. I'm going to leave this alone instead of cutting the scallops because I think what I'm going to add to these are prairie points. And so I'm going to come back and add little prairie points to mine, or I might even add some like little bubbles, maybe some seaweed. I think this is going to be cute. So I think that I like this, and I may even add a second clamshell over here in the other corner. So I could add 2 clamshells and make them shorter. I could add 3 clamshell. I could add 1 clamshell to all 4 corners. You decide what you want to do. I think that I could come in here and just add the little scallops if I wanted to. So if I really, really wanted to, I could just come in here and just draw and trim my little scallops. So after you're done, just draw your scallops, lay it down, and then it would have the shape of the little clamshell. And so I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do, but I might, like I said, add a little bit of seaweed over here and just turn this into a shell. And so I'm going to think on that. Sometimes ideas just have to cook in my brain before they're done. All right, friends, that is how easy it is to add a little clamshell to yours. I don't know if you have any other questions, but I think that this is going to be super, super cute. This one is ready. I'm going to do one more panel just like this. I've got it marked where I need to trim it off. And so now I just have to take my other panels and I'm going to do the same thing I've done. I have my long panels and I'm going to add them to the side. So I just have to measure what my panels are going to be down this side, and I'm going to go ahead and add my sea creatures to this one. And then I'm going to finish it by adding a clamshell block to the top and a clamshell block to the bottom before I put this side panel on. But I'm going to add my little vertical creatures, so the ones on the side are going to go vertically like this. So they have to fit, and so they're going to go like this. And all of these animals are about 6 inches tall, just to kind of give you an idea. You can make this quilt as big as you want it because these are 10-inch blocks. So if you wanted to make this bigger, you could make this bigger. Just remember that all of these subunits are all 10-inch finished, so they're 10.5 inches before you start. So if you want to make it longer or wider, you could do the same thing, the same with these side panels, as long as you kept it all the same. All right, friends, that's all that I have tonight. I want you to have some fun. If you have not started this quilt, it doesn't take long. You could work on it. So you decide what you want to put in those corners. You don't even have to do the little clamshells. You could just do something else. I'm going to leave these little clamshells in the corner and let them cook in my brain, because sometimes what I put on a pattern isn't necessarily what ends up in the finished piece. And so I like how these look, but there's a lot of empty space here, so I have to think on that. I'm definitely thinking some seaweed. What do you guys think? I think this is super adorable, and this is going to be super cute. Anyway, thank you for indulging me in my fun hobby. These are all my original patterns that you see on this website. They're available at www.jellyrollclub.com. I want you to pass this hobby on, so if you can adopt another person that's never known how to sew, please talk to your friends, your neighbors, and get them involved, because quilting and sewing, I don't want it to be a dying art. I want you to get out there and pay it forward, just like somebody did to me. A very kind lady took me in a long time ago when I was an adolescent, and she taught me how to sew, and this is one of my favorite hobbies. So thank you, everybody. Happy quilting. Give it a thumbs up. Share it with your friends, and I appreciate you guys joining me here on the Jelly Roll Club. Have a beautiful rest of your week. Bye, everybody. Have a good one. Bye. Thank you so much. I hope you like my crazy things.